I want to talk about something else now.
Okay.
I had a question, an email I received yesterday, which I intend to answer as by email. I don't know if they're going to be listening to this broadcast, by a very, very wonderful person who's been in contact with us before. And he asked a question which I've heard before. I've even been approached by good friends here in Israel who are very much into the Temple Mount and the Mikdash, but they say this. Right now, geopolitical situation and the situation in Israel is such that we're not going to build a Mikdash today or tomorrow, let's say. Why don't we build a tabernacle, and just put it wherever? Like we had a tabernacle for 400 years or so, and it was mostly in Shiloh, I think 369 years in Shiloh, and then in a few other places. Like, let's get started. Let's build a tabernacle. In fact, I even have a friend who had a brilliant idea. Let's fill the Western Wall Plaza with earth, so it's the same height as the Temple Mount, and build a tabernacle there. That sounds brilliant, but we don't, and we're not supposed to build a tabernacle now. And what's the reason? Why can't we just? It seems like, let's just recreate history. We did it the first time we entered Eretz Yisrael. Why not do it again? We'll get there. We'll get to the temple one day. But until we do, let's get started.
So remember, we did have Mishkan, a tabernacle in different places, Nov, Shiloh, but when you look in Masechet Zvachim, in the Mishnayot even, it brings a pasuk over there, and it says, you didn't get to the Menucha, the Nachala. There's different words there.
Yeah.
And Chazal, our rabbis, learned from this, and this is what David HaMelech understood as well, that ultimately there's a place called Beit Olamim, okay? And that's essentially the house of forever, eternity essentially. And really that's the Beit HaMikdash, that's the temple. And essentially until that point in time, there was a dispensation to have, a tabernacle here and there. But once we arrived at our place, once David HaMelech, David, and Shmuel, Hanavi, the prophet, had located the exact place of the Beit HaMikdash, and once David moved the ark to the Beit HaMikdash, to the temple grounds, that was it. You were no longer allowed to build or do any service outside actually the temple. And there was actually in those same Mishnayot, we talk about this other guy who essentially took off. He didn't get the Kohen Gadol job, and then he took off to actually Egypt, and he built himself a temple. And there's all these questions about that temple. Are those Kohanim ever allowed to serve in the Beit HaMikdash in Israel? And they have all these questions. How do we view these people, in terms of the sin that they were committing? Because, was it for Jews? Was it for non-Jews? A lot of story there, but that's not important to what we're discussing now. But once we got there, it's asur according to our Jewish law, according to our Chazal, our rabbis in the Mishnah already. Of course, then the Gemara expands on that to actually find any other place. And it makes sense because really where the Even HaShtiyah is where the
foundation stone.
The foundation stone is where the whole world was created.
Right.
And the Mizbeach is where Adam was created. And we understand that this is really the source or the portal to the spiritual realms and worlds. And it makes a lot of sense that we've arrived at the place. Nothing anymore can we do. Everything would be secondary and really not fulfill the purpose. And especially if that's not the plan of God for us.
Yeah, as you said, this really is geographically the place.
Correct.
Hamakom, that's what Hamakom means, the
exactly.
Place. We could build something somewhere else, but it's not it. It misses the point.
Hamakom is, I think you said it well, Hamakom is, what does makom mean? I actually heard a really beautiful thing on Hamakom, because we say when you go in a house of someone who's in mourning and they've just lost their loved ones in the first days, Shiva, the first 7 days, you say Hamakom yinachem etchem. May Hamakom, meaning the place, give you comfort. And really it's referring to God. Why is God called Hamakom? And they say because when a person loses a loved one, Hashem comes in. He takes the place there to give you comfort. So he comes within your makom. And usually we say a makom is in your daled amot, your 4 cubits around you. And that's where God is coming. And so, as you said about the temple is hamakom. Why? Because It's the place where God's Shekhinah, He distills His Shekhinah to actually be with us.
Right.
Right? There's
It's
the idea of
place,
tzimtzum, right? In Kabbalah, it's called tzimtzum, whereas mitzamtzim, he limits. Obviously, if we were exposed to God's greatness and spirituality, we wouldn't be able to exist as humans.
Be obliterated.
Right. So He distills, and that's like the idea of the parochet. The parochet like distills His presence, to us.
Avraham, and to Mount Moriah when he was going to offer up his son. It's the place he refers to it as Hamakom. And in this place, he says, we will see God and will be seen by God. And that's exactly what the place of the temple is. That's where we go to be seen by God and to see God. We're commanded 3 times a year.
Right.
All your males come to the temple to be seen by God. And of course, when we go up to the Temple Mount today, and you and I will both be going up with hopefully many people on Tisha B'Av next Sunday. You know that you're being seen by God. You just, again, experiential. You just know it. You go there and it's a mess. Let's face it. There's garbage all over, and we've given it over to the Muslim Waqf to take care of, and it's just
big mistake. Big
huge
mistake,
obviously. But just like you go there, and it took me. It's not a pretty sight. You have to really be able to get in your mind's eyes what needs to be there.
I think mixed emotions up there at times. Yeah.
But what you do feel is that you're in the place, and that God is seeing that you're in the place. You're being noticed. God knows that you're there.
Can I tell you a great story?
Yeah.
Of being up there? Another name for the Beit HaMikdash is called Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the reason is because Ariel means a lion, and one of the reasons is the Mishnah in Midot actually says that the front of the Mikdash, so the Ulam area was wider than
the entranceway.
Correct,
was wider.
Was wider than the Heichal and the Holy of Holies. So, and it looked like the face of a lion.
Yeah, you see, a lion has a mane, and
Correct.
his head is very large, compared to the rest of his body, I think. And so, the opening, the entranceway of the Mikdash looks like this lion. In fact, every once in a while I'll take a photo of a lion and superimpose it on our beautiful painting of the daily offering.
Right.
And, and you see it. You really can see why they called it Ariel, which actually means Lion of God.
That's correct.
Aryeh is lion, and Ariel is Lion of God, which, of course, Rav Ariel took on the name.
Took on the name, right. I think his name was Stiglitz or
something like that.
Something like that. A better name. Ariel's a nicer name. Flows nicer. But I was on the Temple Mount, and I had a daughter that was single, and I prayed for her. I said, I'd love for her to find someone. And I actually went up there to pray for her. And ironically, interestingly enough, the guy she met, his name was Ariel.
Oh,
so
nice.
I thought that was like apropos for the experience. And I've had a lot of interesting experiences. I think a lot of people can attest to interesting experiences of praying on the Temple Mount on Har HaBayit, and seeing very interesting responses from God. It's not always, don't think you'll go up there and get an immediate response to everything. But I can tell you, I've been going up for 16 years. I know Yitzchak's been going up for like 40 years. And
89 was the first
okay, he's gone up much longer than me. But I can tell you that over a period of time, there's multiple experiences, different types of experiences, and some have been where you literally feel God's presence there.
Yeah.
Not always do you feel it, because there's a lot of distractions. Sometimes the Arabs are rioting, or the police are not very respectful to the people that are there. But often you can be in a zone and be able to connect on a really beautiful level with God.
A wonderful minhag, I'll say now. A new custom is when we go up to the Temple Mount, is that when we travel and you go in the same direction, you actually. We always enter in the southwest corner and head due east, and then north, and then west, and then back toward the south again. That's the way that you're supposed to travel on the Temple Mount, according to halakha, according
always
to Jewish
to
law.
the right.
And we have a custom that when we get to the area which is due east of where the temple stood, that we stop and we pray now. And, the concept of being due east, of the temple. It was a concept already, I think, in the temple times. Like to be in that spot and be facing directly toward the Heichal, toward the sanctuary of the temple, is just like an amazing experience. And again, you really have to almost train yourself to focus and see that. I'm always posting photos of people, Jews in the Temple Mount, and you always see the dome in the back. And I always feel like, it's the dome.
Right.
But it's the place where the temple will stand.
Right.
And that's what you have to be seeing beyond that dome. The dome itself was built by the Muslims as a monument to the Mikdash. They knew the Mikdash stood there. They knew it was the holiest place on earth, and that's why they built that.
It was
That
actually done as a
amazing.
favor to the Jewish people.
Mhm.
When I forget the name of the sultan that built
I
it.
think it was Omer, maybe?
Could be, yeah.
But or not Omer, no, I forget now. But I've been reading a book which came out very recently. It was very highly recommended about Muslim sources about the temple, and the book points out that until the establishment of the state of Israel, really, there was plenty of literature in Muslim sources that recognize that the Quran itself recognizes the Temple Mount, recognizes that the temple stood there. In fact, we've shown before there were guidebooks that the Waqf, would publish all through up through 1948, and in it it says, the mosque and the dome stand in the place where David built a temple and where Herod's temple stood, and David and the prophet Samuel. It really goes into detail, talks all about that openly. They're proud of it, and again, Islam recognized the holiness and recognized that there were two temples built there. Had no problem with that. In fact, the Quran says the Jews will return and build a temple. And there are some Muslim clerics today who have the clarity of mind and courage to say that, And it's really nice to hear that, because I think the more you hear it, the more it might start to seep in. But the whole concept of, temple denial, which is in full flow right now, I mean, it only came in, began in 48 and went into full force in 67. All of a sudden, they're basically denying their own sources written not by historians, but by, Muslim men of cloth, clerics.
Professor Kedar, who's an expert on the temple area and also speaks fluent Arabic and has, I think, 25 years served in the Israeli government, in the army actually, as to deal with Arabs, Arab enemies. He was the one who understood the culture and everything. He's a pretty interesting guy. He actually showed that the place that is called the Dome of the Rock area, that covers it. He says that in Arabic literature, they used to refer to it as Beit Makdasha,
Right.
which is Beit HaMikdash.
Right.
So, in Arabic, that's what it was called,
And
Makdasha.
and the Arabic, name for Jerusalem is Al-Quds, which is just an abbreviation of that. Al-Quds means the Kodesh, the holy. Why is it the holy? It's the holy because the Mikdash was there. Why? In fact, Muhammad never left the Arabian Peninsula. This myth, or Agadah, whatever you want to call it, that
Legend,
he, flew up to heaven from the Al-Aqsa. Well, Al-Aqsa existed it was in Medina or something. It was somewhere in the Arabian Peninsula, and it means the farthest mosque. There were two mosques in town. There's the closer one and the further one.
Right.
Was the source of that legend.
There was a Saudi Arabian, I think, cleric that actually came out and said that recently, right?
Right.
To confirm that. As we're making peace with these countries,
Right.
they're coming out with the truth.
And so only about a century after Muhammad died, when there was a schism in the Muslim world, and I think that there was a tax being charged by the Muslims in control of Mecca to go on the Hajj there. So whoever was in charge in Iraq or something, I forget the details, didn't want his people to go there, so he wanted to set up another holy site that they could make a pilgrimage to. So that's when the Temple Mount became, a place of pilgrimage, I guess, to Muslims, and it was because of a political division in the Muslim world at the time. Okay.
But you know what? if I may just say something here, Yitzchak. I'm less concerned what the Muslims think about the Temple Mount or the place where our temple was. I think one of our bigger problems is that many Jews themselves fail to recognize or even understand that this is our holiest of places. Many religious Jews who somehow they just get to the kotel, just get to that, the Wailing Wall as they call it. Once again, it's a Golas term, Wailing Wall. It's an exile term. It's a term of avelut, of mourning. And they fail to want to know what's on the other side. And really, I think that's our biggest problem. I think if the Jewish people would understand how important this place is, for the Jewish people, they wouldn't allow what's going on right now. And you and I both know, Reuven was going up when it was probably a handful of people going up to the Temple Mount. I went up when there was a few, let's say per year, a few thousand people going up. Now there's about 30,000 people going up to the Temple Mount, B'kedusha v'tahara, that they're going to the mikvah and they're making sure they do everything according to halacha, according to Jewish law. But really that's just a small amount of people. And a lot of Torah Jews still have not come to terms with the gift, this incredible gift that God gave us in 1967. And, I always say to people that don't understand the Temple Mount or don't want to understand about the Temple Mount, religious people, rabbis, and I say, let me ask you one question. And the question I always have for them is, why do you think in 1967 God gave us the Temple Mount after 2,000 years of being in exile, 2,000 years having nothing to do with the temple, not even being allowed to go up to the Temple Mount, and suddenly we get this beautiful gift, and it wasn't just a beautiful gift, it was done by Nes. It was an open miracle. Anybody who knows the story of the War of 67, studies it, knows that this was an incredible miracle. Rav Ariel from the Temple Institute was one of the paratroopers who liberated Temple Mount, and he was an eyewitness to the miracles of God. Now, why is God giving this to us? He's not giving it to us so that we can just leave it fallow and do nothing with it.